It is 8:03, and I will call us to order. The OneNote with the draft agenda is in chat as well as has been distributed by email. But first, we will do opportunity for public comment. If any member of the gallery wishes to address the LNC, just either raise your hand, like using the raise hand feature, or click the yes button, either one, and I'll recognize you. Going once. Going twice. Not seeing anyone. Oh, I'm guessing that's Mr. Requero of Florida.
Yes. Do you hear me well?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening to everyone on the LNC and all of our guests and everybody around the U.S. I just want to say briefly, congratulations. If there are any candidates on here or anybody that's working on campaigns, I was working on a local one myself. Just congratulations to all of our LP candidates. Whether you win or lost, you make a real big difference. And it was just really awesome to see all the different campaigns. And I know I contributed to a handful of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Requero. Anyone else wish to address the LNC? Seeing none, I will close opportunity for public comment and we'll proceed to the attendance roll call. Madam Secretary, could you call the roll? I think you're still muted.
All righty. Mr. Bishop Henchman?
Here.
Mr. Molman?
Here.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
I am present. Ms. Epke?
Here.
Mr. Longstreth?
Present.
Mr. Rautsep?
Present.
Ms. Sarwark?
Present.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith? Ms. Bilyeu?
Present.
Mr. Coburn?
Here.
Mr. Hewitt? Mr. Hewitt? Ms. Hogarth?
Here.
Mr. Nana?
Present.
Mr. Nikela?
Present.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Wen?
Here.
Ms. Adams? Ms. Adams?
I'm here. Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. I'm here.
No problem. Mr. Bowen?
Present.
Mr. Buffman? Mr. Buffman? Mr. Fiera?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Present.
Mr. Lucchini? Mr. Lucchini?
Here, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Mr. Sexton?
Present.
Mr. Valenti?
Here.
Okay, I'm going to go back. Mr. Smith? Mr. Hewitt? Mr. Buffman? And for staff, I show Mr. Fishman, Mr. Kraus, Mr. Pizzell. Is there any staff I'm missing?
Ms. Schultz is here.
Okay.
I think that's everyone.
All right, Mr. Chair, Mr. Smith is missing, Mr. Hewitt is missing, and Mr. Buffman. With the absence of Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Fiera will be sitting in his slot for regional.
Thank you. Next item of business is the adoption of the agenda. I circulated tardily, I concede, a draft agenda. It's available at the link that was provided by email and chat, and maybe we can even put it on the screen.
Did you want me to share my screen?
Would you be able to? That'd be great.
Sure, one moment. I'm going to need to pull it up on my desktop first. So just give me a moment and I'll be able to do that.
While she's doing that, are there any amendments anybody wishes to make to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I sent a question about the additional committees. I don't know if we want to talk about that tonight or not, but I just wanted to note that those committees are probably in need of being filled in the near term.
Yeah, it's a good point. I would say if anybody has language, well, ideally language should have been distributed before right now. So I would say let's work on language and we can get it done in between now and the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, the language exists in the policy manual.
The amended language. There's been proposals to change those three. All right. There's the agenda. Let's see. The draft agenda, rather. Any motions to amend?
Mr. Chair, I move the adoption of the agenda.
Ms. Ebke moves the adoption of the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Coburn. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, the agenda is adopted. Excuse me. Excellent. All right. First item up is social media messaging. Mr. Roudsepp, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attached to the agenda under old business, there is a first draft for the guidelines for social media use by the Libertarian Party. I am actively seeking input and as well as the Marketing and Messaging Committee on this. So I encourage all attendees to please review and send the committee any ideas, comments, commentary to make this a better policy.
Thank you, Mr. Roudsepp. Do you want to go into any more just kind of high level, what you guys were trying to aim for with it, and then we can do questions and comments?
So basically what we were trying to do through the initial conversations were that identifying what social media the Libertarian Party is currently utilizing, how do we go ahead and identify new social media in the future, how do we moderate social media or self-moderate, what privacy concerns do we have as a party, what are some of the limitations or abilities of individuals that we grant the keys to the kingdom, as to say, defining intellectual property and copyright and ownership of the Libertarian Party, additional security issues, actions and behaviors to be expected of anybody involved in social media, as well as just a general social media best practices for future knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Roudsepp. We'll open up for questions or comments. Ms. Harless.
I had a question. Did you mean for that heading to say which social media tools is government currently using?
No, I'm sorry. The headline is actually incorrect. We did utilize several different social media policies from the U.S. government, the Canadian government, as well as some influence from some of the European nations as a ladder and a structure. And I must have missed that title. I do apologize.
Add one additional, just a clarification on LPedia. While I'm sure it's primarily libertarians that are adding to it, anyone can, and I know there are several non-libertarians who are just interested in political history that are also contributors.
That addition is well met, and I would be more than happy to have that changed.
Thank you, Ms. Harless. Mr. Molman.
Yes, Mr. Bishop Henchman, I think I don't know if it was a public or a private conversation, it was before the convention, I believe, where you had mentioned something about being a bit more positive in our social media, I believe. I want to say that I very much want us to be more positively focused on the good things that we're doing instead of being, I can't use that word on a public meeting. Trash posters. That's what I'll say. I would much rather us focus on the good things that we are doing rather than taking pokes at other people. I think that will help instill a more positive attitude in the party overall. And so unfortunately, I have not read Mr. Raudsep's proposal, but I hope that it includes something that says more about us being positive about the good things we are doing rather than, I mean, obviously when government does bad things, we call it out, but do it in a way that, we are portraying a more positive, I guess I'll say mature, it's not quite the right word, image, and talk a lot about the good things we have going on in the party, because we do have a lot of good things going on, and I feel like we don't talk about that enough. So that's what I had to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rhodes, just for clarification, it's my understanding that you're not looking for a decision, a vote, anything like that from us tonight. You're just presenting this material, asking us to peruse it as we're able to get back to you with the input points, things we like, things we don't like, so that you can better develop a proposal. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding?
Mr. Raudsep.
No, you are absolutely correct. This is very much a working draft at this time, and I feel that it still needs development, but it is a good first step and will soon result in a formalized policy for social media for the party.
Okay, so this is just at this point, it's not an action item, it's not even necessarily a discussion item, just something for us to marinate on. And if we have any input, what is your preferred method of us responding to you? Do you prefer email? Do you want a phone call? What works best for you and your committee?
Email is usually the best, and we can go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Ms. Harless.
Mr. Raudsep, if you wish to see, I can send you privately. There were several training videos that I've done on social media for the Libertarian Party of Colorado and several other affiliates that might be of use to you.
Absolutely. I would very much appreciate that as well.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Mr. Hagan.
So is the idea to add this to the policy manual?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet. Whether it would be in the policy manual or it would be an enduring directive that can be modified. So I guess if you have opinions on that, share those with Mr. Raudsep as well. Mr. Coburn.
Yeah. Is the vision for this for it to be run by staff, volunteers, or a mixture of the two? And if it's going to be volunteers, then maybe we could address that in the document of how people can become volunteers or what we're looking for in terms of qualifications and characteristics.
Qualifications have not been outlaid. However, the wording throughout the document does apply to employees and qualified volunteers.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Let's see. Joshua, is that Mr. Smith?
Sorry, that was an accident of hand raising.
Okay. But Mr. Smith is here, so note that for the record. Anyone else on this item? Seeing none, we are done with it. Next item on the agenda is policy manual change meeting minutes. Ms. Harlos, 10 minutes.
Okay, one note. Under old business, there is a change to policy, a proposed change to section 1.02 meetings. This was reworked between myself and Mr. Fieri after he had noticed some weaknesses in my prior proposal. So we had carried this over, and my proposal is to add this following language. If the minutes are not submitted through the auto approval process previously described, minutes must be presented for approval no later than 30 days prior to the next regular meeting or within 60 days of the second regular meeting following if the next regular meeting will occur in less than 60 days. This would be added to the very end of that section in order to fill the gap. So that is my motion to add that language to that section of the policy manual.
Ms. Harless has made that motion, and would it be possible to get the language on the screen?
Sure. One moment. Let me hit my share thing here.
And the chair notes Mr. Hewitt is here. So full house.
For some reason, it's not, is it coming up? It's not letting me share, Mr. Chair. Oh, here we go.
There we go. All right. So Ms. Harlos has moved the adoption of this language. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Longstreth. Is there objection?
Mr. Chair, no objection, but I do have a substitute motion.
So I'll, for purposes of you offering your substitute, I'll note that there is objection so that we can proceed to debate. Ms. Harlos, did you want to speak further on your proposal? And then I'll recognize Mr. Ferreira, excuse me.
I would like to reserve my comments till after Mr. Fiera offers his substitute. I have his substitute on the screen as well. He and I did talk about this, so I'm fully aware of what he'll be offering.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Harlos. Mr. Ferreira.
Yeah, so both of ours, in effect, are the exact same result. My language is just longer to provide a little bit more clarity. In both cases, it's the exact same impact on the secretary in preparing the minutes and on the body in approving the minutes. And I can read it out to you guys if you'd like.
Up to you.
I just broke the clause into 2 sentences. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mr. Ferrer has moved his substitute. Is there a second?
I'll second his substitute.
Mm-hmm. All right. Seconded by Ms. Harlos. Is there objection to the adoption of the substitute?
Yes, there is objection only to the point that I would like to hear from other members if they have input. I am fine with either version, to be honest with you.
All right. There is objection to the substitute, so we'll proceed to debate. Anybody wishing to debate this, raise your hand and you'll be recognized. Ms. Adams.
They both, in effect, do the same thing. I don't see a whole lot of benefit in going down a long rabbit hole. Personally, I prefer the verbiage in TJ's motion, in his substitute, but either one accomplishes the task. I don't know that I have a hardcore preference.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Coburn.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. And I think that the second one is cleaner. It's easier to understand for anyone that's going to be reading it. So I would prefer the second one.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the adoption of the substitute? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, the question is automatically called. Ms. Harless, is adoption of a substitute a main motion, or can we do this one by hand?
The substitute first has to be substituted in for the primary. It acts as a first amendment, as a first layer of amendment.
So it'll be an amendment. And so let's do that by hands then. Voting members of the committee, if you, so we'll first vote on the adoption of the substitute to replace the main motion. Vote yes if you favor the adoption of the substitute. Vote no if you do not favor the adoption of the substitute. And please use the green yes and red no buttons. So go ahead and put your votes in there.
And I assume, Jeff, you'll be voting at this point? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, as a point of order, I don't seem to have a yes or no on the mobile here.
Okay.
Neither do I, sir.
All right. Do you want to tell me what your vote is? And
It's going to be affirmative. So
It's underneath participants, the yes or no, if you guys are looking for it. It's not under more.
it's in the participant window, I think is what Mr. Smith was saying. All right. So I count 14. Mr. Molman and Mr. Nana, do you want to... Mr. Molman, you found it, it looks like, and then Mr. Nana found it. So, all right, 16 yes, 0 no. So the substitute is adopted. We're now back to the main motion as substituted. Is there further debate? Seeing none, then the question's automatically called. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Sure, one moment. Ms. Bilyeu?
Aye.
1 second here. Mr. Coburn?
Aye.
Ms. Epke?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
I shall vote yes. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth?
Yes.
Mr. Longstreth?
Yes.
Mr. Molman?
Yes.
Mr. Nana?
yes.
Mr. Nikela?
I vote aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Radsep?
Aye.
Ms. Sarwark?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Went?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I have 16 to 0 to 0.
And I'll abstain. All right, it is adopted. Excellent. Moving on to new business. First item is modify the 2020 budget relating to media and campaigns. Mr. Hagan, 10 minutes.
Okay. I move to amend the budget to change line item 80 media from 18,200 and change it to 1,200, and change line item 60 campaign and candidate support from 260,200 and change it to $277,200.
I'll second.
Been moved by Mr. Hagan, seconded by Mr. Longstreth. Is there any objection? Ms. Adams, is that objection?
Yeah, I would like rationale for this before we move into a vote.
Mr. Hagan, do you want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, let me pull it back up. Yeah, basically what it's doing is shifting 17,000 from media and into campaign and candidate support. The reason is that the media included amounts, originally had it in there for a PR firm that decided not to use. And instead, they have spent money for additional support for candidates. Several candidates are running last week, plus a video to support the presidential campaign. So basis puts a budget more in line with the current spending. And we have a leeway in policy manual. We can spend up to 10% higher than the budget for each line item. And I think even without this motion, they were still within that guideline, but this is just to get us closer to what the actual spending has been.
So it's just to kind of clean it up and create balance on paper for the things we did that we can do. It's just housekeeping, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing no objection, it is adopted.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Well, don't go far, Mr. Hagan. Second item, modify the 2020 budget item relating to outreach and affiliate support. Mr. Hagan, 10 minutes.
Okay, move to amend the budget again. This to change line item 88 outreach, change it from 8,500, change it to 6,500, and change line item 50 affiliate support from 57,900 and change it to 59,900. And basically what it does is it moves $2,000 from outreach and moves it into affiliate support.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Hagan and seconded by Mr. Longstreth. Is there objection?
Mr. Chair, I don't have objection, but I'd like to ask the treasurer a question on that matter.
Go for it.
Mr. Hagan, shoot, sorry, just jumped to the car again. Mr. Hagan, question, is this just going to be taking us to zero sum, or is there anything else? Is this adding anything to affiliate support to give any sort of buffer?
For this one, we had a donor, we gave a donation. They specified 2,000 be used to support the state affiliate in Texas.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is a zero balance on the budget, shifting 2,000 from one expense to a different expense.
Got it.
Shift into the affiliate support.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you, sir.
All right. Is there any objection to the motion? Going once, going twice? Then it is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Hagan.
Welcome.
Next item, discussion and motion on December meeting online versus in person. We don't have anything. I put this on the agenda because I figured we'd want to discuss it, if not act on it. I think Mr. Kraus is here. If you wouldn't mind kind of giving us an update on what you know from the hotel, and then well, we can go from there and
sure,
maybe get a sense of the body.
Jeff could probably tell us more of the situation on the ground, but the hotel did inform us about a week ago that they are back in purple and legally they cannot allow us to hold our meeting unless the situation changes. They will cancel our meeting. I believe that's effective next Monday on the 16th. So unless they get out of purple by November 16th, they will cancel our meeting. Our contract allows us to, obviously, if they cancel, it's not an issue. If we cancel, we're allowed to postpone that into the February-March period.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Mr. Hewitt, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so, everything's fine with the rooms as far as, even being in purple, we can all stay in the rooms. I have a backup anyway. There's no problem. There's a place that I can use for sure. It's about 20 minutes away. We can have transportation there, everything else, regardless of what color we're in. So we'll have a great location for the meeting itself. And in fact, that same location hosted our election night party with probably a good 100 people there and 5 different candidates. So.
Yeah, I should add the outdoor event is not an issue currently for the VIP party Saturday evening.
Well, we can, and look, we can do whatever we want. All right, so. We'll do whatever everybody feels safe doing, since we pulled off a convention that had pretty good safety actually. So yeah, we're not going to be out of purple though, because the governor's the governor's edicts basically say you've got to be red, you know, the levels to go into red for 3 weeks before you can go to purple, and we're not in those yet. So we're good. I mean, it'll be just fine to stay at the hotel and everything. We've got a great venue that we can use. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. I have Ms. Adams, Ms. Hogarth, and Ms. Ebke. Ms. Adams?
So I have really strong feelings, as you all are already aware, that we do indeed need to meet in person, face to face. Absolutely, I would love for us to be able to do that in California, like we all decided in Minneapolis, right? Clearly, that was the intent of every member of this board. So if we're able to do that, sure, that's what I'd like to do. If for some reason we become unable to do it, though, I'm incredibly unnerved that the immediate jump to is to a virtual or a hybrid versus immediately jumping to a meeting at HQ and being maybe uncomfortable as we're cramped across the entire top floor. We still need to find a way to try and meet in person. HQ is always a good drop dead backup, in my opinion. Others may disagree. We all get to disagree with each other, but I'm absolutely adamantly against not doing everything in our power to meet somewhere in person for at least our quarterly meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. I have Ms. Hogarth, Ms. Ebke, Mr. Wendt, Ms. Hogarth.
Thanks. Mr. Hewitt, you said you had a meeting place backed up 20 minutes away. Can you tell me 20 minutes in what direction?
Yeah, it's just east out the 10 from Riverside.
So
it's actually in Calamasa. Yeah.
So is it would you say it's closer to LA or farther from LA?
It's further from LA. It's toward.
Yeah.
I'm actually coming back from Palm Springs right now, and that's where I landed after going to the function last night. But,
yeah. Okay. So you're breaking up pretty bad, but some of those of us who have obtained lodgings elsewhere are going to be extra inconvenienced, but I guess just that's the nature of meeting during a plague.
Well, and I can always look, that's my standby that I can use anytime. I can go ahead and look further for something that we can use right downtown too, the same way. All right, so I'll spend a little bit more time looking for a backup down there if need be, if that's going to make it a lot more convenient. But I assume most of the people are going to be in and around Riverside for lodging. So really, it's on Ontario Airport's the closest one. But if you're coming from LAX or whatever, it's a little bit farther drive. I will, but I'll look for something. I gave a speech at a Lincoln Club that was indoors. We had 50 people there. We did, social distancing and all, but we'll see what happens. There's going to be a lot happen between now and December here in California.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Hogarth, did you have anything further?
No, I didn't.
Okay, thank you. I have Ms. Ebke, then Mr. Wendt. Ms. Ebke?
Yeah, Mr. Hewitt, I wonder if you could fill us in a little bit on what the nature of, restaurant service and things like that are in the purple level. Is this going to be one of those things where we're doing lots of takeout again? Or, can we go out, or what's the story there?
Mr. Hewitt?
That's funny you asked that, Laura, because we just finished eating at a restaurant, a nice restaurant on Palm Canyon Drive, downtown Palm Springs. And because Palm Springs is as draconian as you get with rules, everything is outside. And of course, we had some rain today, and the winds came through, and it basically blew the covers from right. I mean, it was pretty crazy. But no, they'll be outdoor. A lot of most of the restaurants have, and they don't get that kind of stuff downtown Riverside or where we're at. There'll be plenty of dining. I do that all the time from my office. It's within a block or two. We can walk. There's lots of nice restaurants, but they're all outside right now. And so, fortunately, we don't get, well, everybody's here because of the climate, so we don't get the crazy temperatures. So there'll be lots of good dining to eat at, but everybody will be eating outside. And if it is a little bit cooler, they put the propane type, you've seen those heaters that they put out and stuff. So yeah, we'll have a lot of different restaurants we can eat at.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Ms. Epke, did you have anything more?
No, I don't have anything more. And obviously, I think most of us on this call already have arrangements made to be out there. The only thing that I would say is that, if it looks like we're going to get canceled, if it looks like there is not a good opportunity, if we're going to make a change, sooner is better than later. So.
Thank you, Ms. Epke. I have Mr. Wendt, then Mr. Molman. Mr. Wendt.
Yes, for clarity, I did see that Ms. Harlos actually put her check mark on before Mr. Molman. Anyway, so I have two questions, just to, because I haven't been following the levels, the COVID. One, what is purple in relation to red? I don't know any of this. These are things I don't follow because I'm in a fairly isolated section of the U.S. And then second, is there any thought, speaking to what Ms. Adams' point brought up of delaying until February for our Riverside meeting and then pushing our February meeting up location? I don't know if that's a possibility. Perhaps Mr. Kraus can speak to that, but those are the questions that I have.
Mr. Kraus, do you want to address either or both of those questions?
Sure. I can look into what's allowed generally in this area. I'm sure I could, getting a large space. I would not feel comfortable holding this in our office. Our office does not have the filtration system, ventilation, etc., that I would feel comfortable having 20 plus people in our either upstairs or downstairs room. For those that were on the board when we held a meeting on a Sunday, it was like torture once, and that was only for about 3 hours downstairs as an experiment. Not something I want to put you through. But there's plenty of locations in the area that do have, 4,000 square feet rooms that are accessible and that we could use with proper social distancing. And all the restaurants are open for both indoor and outdoor dining. Indoor with 50% capacity, at least in this area of Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. And then Mr. Wendt, it looks like Mr. Ferreira has information on the colors in the chat there.
Okay, thank you very much. And was our February meeting scheduled for HQ then? Is that what I'm tracking?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't think so. I think we had it somewhere else. But, we can do what not to sound too eat, pray, love about it, but we can do whatever it is we want to do. So,
understandable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. I have Mr. Molman and then Ms. Harlos. Mr. Molman.
Yes, and I hope I'm coming through clear because I'm driving. I want to emphasize or re-emphasize or add on to what Aaron had said. This is our budget meeting. I think it's very important that we do budget meetings in person. As anybody who's been through one of these knows, there's a lot of things that can get resolved, differences in opinions on where money should be allocated and kind of working out the details of that. Budgets, as detailed as the budget is, it's still kind of a high level. There's many things under each budget item. And so being able to communicate and, be able to work those things out, I think is important. And I guess the question I would have, we've heard from Mr. Hewitt. I saw Mr. Fiera put comments in. I'd like to hear from another Californian as well. So I'd like to hear TJ's input on what he thinks the situation is in California and whatnot as well, the feasibility of holding this meeting.
If it's all right, I'll put them at the end of the queue, just so there's people ahead of them.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Ms. Harless.
And I am going to be piggybacking a bit on what Ms. Adams and Mr. Molman said, that I did want to emphasize this, that wasn't emphasized last time, that this is our budget meeting, which is probably the most detailed meeting we're going to have, where it is absolutely essential that everyone be together. And there's a lot of after hours meetings that happen with that too, as Mr. Bishop Henchman knows, with the work that he and Mr. Longstreth had done on a previous budget. And just in general, because we're going to be facing this, I'm sure, over the next year, I once again urge everyone, our meetings can be either in person or they can be electronic. Hybrid is not allowed by our policy manual, and I would argue under our bylaws. So if we get to a point where we think we cannot meet, then it needs to be an online meeting. I think it's very clearly against our policy manual, as we've all seen. But our budget meeting has to be in person unless it is just absolutely impossible.
Thank you, Ms. Harless. I have Mr. Roudsep, Mr. Ferreira, and then Mr. Hewitt again. Mr. Roudsep.
So according to my notes, the agreement for our February-March meeting would be in Boston. And looking at the Boston COVID restrictions, currently there are no meetings allowed over 10 people. And any meeting that is over 10 people is a fine of $500 per person over the 10 people. So I don't think Boston would be a feasible meeting at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Roudsep. I have Mr. Ferreira, Mr. Hall, and Ms. Adams. Mr. Ferreira.
Yeah, to address Ken's question, given our history with the in-person convention in Orlando and our meeting in Minnesota, I would say that we have a good track record of holding meetings and not furthering any spread of disease. Knock on wood that we would continue that. California's rules, in order to be in purple, it is a very low bar to get over. I think it is 7 cases for every 100,000 people in the county or something like that, get you up into the purple range. So while that's the highest tier, it is a very low bar in order to get into the highest tier. So I think there's a little bit of hype around those numbers. That being said, Riverside County right now is at 11.5 new COVID cases per 100,000 is the latest number for them. So they are above that 7. I would love to see everyone come to California, and I agree with the previous statements that I think we should be meeting in person for this particular budget meeting.
Chair, could I add that? Right after, I'll add on to what he said.
Sure.
I was just at the XCOM meeting for the Texas party in Texas, and Texas right now has much higher surges than California does. This is the arbitrary kind of stuff that our governor came up with that has no relevance to anything. It measures positivity in cases, has no relevance to hospitalizations or deaths or anything else of real substance. So with what Tim said too, yeah, actually we have a higher case rate because of Eastern Coachella Valley with mostly farm workers and such, and that the areas down where we're at aren't, like you say, talk about a low bar. So these are all arbitrary things. I have no problem with, if a hotel has a problem, remember all the businesses have to be really careful. They don't want to piss off the governor. But we've got our rooms. We'll have a place very, very close. I'll try to make it as close as possible for people like Susan and stuff. And there's no reason not to. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. I have Mr. Hall, Ms. Adams, Mr. Lucchini, and Mr. Wendt. Mr. Hall.
I was just going to add on to what Mr. Rodsep said with Boston, but also point out that it also included New York as well for our March meeting next year. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Ms. Adams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it may become important for us to try and just talk ourselves into some flexibility. Clearly, the goal was to shift our meetings to every region. I still think that it is an admirable goal and one we just should absolutely try to achieve. We may need to get creative and flexible about maybe things look not so great in this region in time for this meeting. Maybe we need to bounce a little bit. I think we are all very adaptable, flexible, capable individuals who can do that. And so I would caution us to not let these projected locations kind of embed themselves for us. We may have to be flexible. I think we can do that. The only other thing I want to add is I know we have a lot of freshmen on the LNC this term. And for anyone who has not yet lived through an LNC budget meeting, I assure you, it bears no similarity whatsoever to any budget meeting you have ever lived through before. And while we may be very adept at some of our online meetings, I think we do really well. This LNC specifically so far has done really well. This is not the meeting we want to try and do online unless we are each dedicated to devoting 24 hours a day for, I don't know, 5-6 days trying to do this all online. Just the way these meetings go, not being able to break out and break into small groups and try and find some solutions. Honestly, if Joe and Richard had not stayed up all night last budget meeting, broke out into a group on their own, gone without sleep, dedicated that time to us, we would not have wound up with a balanced budget even in a weekend, right? It's something that this meeting in particular, it's not like anything else you've ever lived through. Once you see it, you'll know what I mean.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Lucchini, and then I think time will expire after you are done speaking, unless anybody will have a motion to extend or to offer. We're actually not debating anything, so so there's that too. Mr. Lucchini.
So my question specifically about California is, in the current conditions, are there going to be penalties for us for having a group larger than whatever the minimum is, right? So you mentioned something about DC being limited to 10 and multi-$100 fines. And I'm sure that Jeff has a nice secure location we can all bunker up and hide from those revenuers looking to tax us. But what are the restrictions and more importantly, the penalties in California? And I just looked. Vermont is the lowest occurrence state right now, but it's draconian. You just simply can't go there. So I don't know what our alternatives are, and I think that this matters. Even if we all are good and defiant about this, I think it matters to some of the people here, and it certainly matters from a publicity standpoint if we get caught. So, Jeff or anybody else from California, can you speak to this issue?
Mr.
Sure.
Hewitt, do you want to answer the question of whether we're going to get fined by Riverside County if we do our meeting in Riverside?
Sure, Chris. No, we're not going to get fined by anybody. And all we have to do is say it's a protest anyway. I went to a meeting of 600 people, and it was called a protest. And there's nothing the county council. I mean, I have all the inside track too. I mean, I discuss these things in closed sessions and stuff. No, there's things we can do. Don't worry. We're not going to get fined.
What about the state, not necessarily the county?
He asked about the state also.
The state has no way of enforcing. They could take away our liquor license, but I don't think we have one.
They could take away your liquor license, Jeff. That was a joke.
But you see, that's the measures the state has, and that's the only reason why most restaurants aren't opening up completely right now.
Time on this item has expired. Is there a motion to extend time? Seeing none, that completes that item. Next item on the agenda is debrief on the 2020 election. I'm going to start very briefly and then turn it over to Mr. Pizzell and Ms. Schultz, who are here, and then we can open it up to everybody. But I think we didn't do too bad. Now, I've been in this party for a long time, obviously, as many of you have been as well. And, well, it looks like we got about 1.8 million votes, which is below 2016, but second only to 2016. We obviously had 50 plus DC ballot access. Registered Libertarians is now 650,000, which is up 7% from March. The membership of the party has grown 29% this year and stands over 21,000, which actually exceeds 2016. Just talking with the staff earlier today, we're going to be getting several tens of thousands of donor and volunteer records from the Jorgensen-Cohen campaign that we can then feed into stuff. And actually a big question that I would benefit from any suggestions or advice on is ideas on what to do with this gigantic pile of people that who are engaged and interested in the Libertarian Party. Policy-wise, also, we're on the offensive on the drug war, which lost on every ballot initiative where it appeared. On tax policy, Illinois and California shot down sizable tax increases, which I never thought would be possible. And then the marquee thing, of course, that I would like to talk about is, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Pacell to talk more, is the Frontier Project, which, so many of you, I think everybody here, spearheaded the effort to invest in this and stuck with it. A completely new strategy for the party to focus resources and strategy towards winnable elections in select and targeted areas. And I flew to Wyoming with Ethan last weekend, so we were there for the final push on the ground. And well, I mean, let's just on the numbers. Obviously, we elected Marshall Burt as a state representative in Wyoming, who's our first elected libertarian elected as a libertarian to a state legislator in a generation. And I was very pleased to get a shirt from him. He had a last couple left over. I spent the next day with Representative-elect Burt, who's a great guy, just talking about strategy for the coming legislative term, and it's just amazing stuff. So you got 54% in a two-way race, beat a 14-year incumbent, and obviously that did not happen accidentally. That happened due to amazing hard work over the last year to knock on all the doors and get all of the support that we managed to get. Now, we did fall short in a couple of other races, although I will say the percentages are awesome for the Frontier candidates. All of them did very well. Obviously, Bethany Baldes fell 32 votes short of election, which was, crushing for me. And honestly, I think what did us in there was same-day voter registration in Wyoming. There was a last-minute rush of about 250, 260, 270 around there. Voters who showed up to vote for the president, and as they are trained, voted party line for Bethany's opponent, and she ended up 32 votes short. So had great, obviously very tough for her, having worked a year on it, but she's remains committed to the party and growing our presence, and had a good breakfast the next morning talking about next steps, and she is excited about the opportunities. It'd be remiss of me also not to mention our many local candidates who did get elected and reelected. Hopefully Ms. Schultz will go a little bit more into detail on that, but we're actually having trouble keeping up with all of the names that people are sending us on people who got elected. I know many of them are in your states, and there's some incredible achievements there. We also broke some records. Ricky Harrington beat our record for a U.S. Senate race. He got 34%. Don Rainwater got 13% for governor of Indiana. And Brad Barron in Kentucky beat the spread and actually was the subject of an attack ad by Mitch McConnell after Mitch McConnell ducked the debate with him. So we were strong enough to get that kind of stuff. And And it's worth noting, of course, that all of these candidates did what they did with a fraction of the money and resources that their opponents did. So what I see from all of this is the strategy is working of and deploying the door knock. And if you look at, I have a list here of who was using the eCanvasser service that we provided. And I mean, it was all the candidates that either won or came very close or did very well. So it's an excellent strategy. I do want to commend Ms. Schultz and Mr. Pizzell for all their hard work. I can't even begin to tell you how much they put into this over the last year to make this succeed. Mr. Pizzell, it's his birthday today, so happy birthday. And he's also, I mean, he I don't know if this probably violates HIPAA, but I mean, he had COVID the last 2 weeks of the election, and, you know, powered through in isolation as best as he could, working to keep all the candidates going and everything. And, you know, just seeing firsthand on the ground what it takes to get our people elected is just amazing work. We start with, I mean, we don't start at zero, unfortunately, as Libertarian candidates. You know, the Democrats and Republicans, they jump in, they've got 30%, 40% already in the bag. We got to go from and go from way below that and build it up. And something I told Bethany and Leela, who also came very close in her election, is you know, we understand that this is an impossible task we're asking of you, and that you guys came so close is a testament to your hard work and everything that everybody's done. So I do want to thank, as I have separately to a lot of candidates personally, and I know a lot of you have been doing phone calls to candidates thanking them, but I do want to thank everybody that ran, because it's an incredible commitment. It's so important to getting our ideas out there, making sure that we are on the radar, so to speak, and that our ballot access is kept all over the country. So to each and every of our, I think nearly 600 candidates, thank you for putting yourself through that. Thank you to their friends and family for allowing them to be put through that. Thank you to everybody who managed the campaign, who was a field director, who phone banked, who text banked. I'm going to be doing a lot more thank yous over the month, and because there's just so many people who did so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Pizzell and then Ms. Schultz to give a few more details. Mr. Pizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to start, I'm going to read the comments from election night, or the day after election night, I should say, from a former Speaker of the House and Chief of Staff of a governor of the state of Wyoming, because I would like for you guys to understand what it feels like in their state for what we're doing. So what does this all mean? It means Democratic legislators like Representative Stan Blake, who's beloved by his constituency, get beat handily by a Libertarian candidate. That clearly didn't happen because Republican voters voted straight party ticket. That happened because Stan was still affiliated with a political party that is in its death throes, which is sad because Stan was a great legislator. If the Democratic Party wants to stop the floodgate losses in Sweetwater County and Wyoming as a whole, they have to reassess what their party stands for. That's too bad, because the opposing voice is a good thing to have in politics. And if they don't figure out how to do it, it's become abundantly clear that the Libertarian Party will. And that's what we're working for. What Marshall was able to accomplish was fantastic, and it was something that I was thrilled to be a part of. Just a quick recap of what we were able to do in the months that we were able to assist. 42,000 doors were knocked, 51,000 calls were made, 10,000 texts, 3,200 units of airtime were purchased, 26 total mailers went out, and a last-minute push on targeted digital mailers. So we were able to do a significant amount. We were able to help candidates not just in Wyoming, but we made phone calls in Washington. We were able to help people in Utah. We made phone calls for the gubernatorial candidate in Utah. We knocked doors in Colorado for Hanawa, who also performed tremendously well, 45% in Colorado in her county commissioner race. And Tricia Butler was our one city council race that really participated heavily in the Frontier Project, and she's joining us tonight. And she, in a 5-way race, was able to get a third of the vote in a city of over 100,000 people. So there was
and win, I suppose.
And win. Yeah, I guess so. Win with a third of the vote among 5 candidates or 6 candidates. So there was some significant successes within and of course without. We've debriefed with staff. I'm going to continue to debrief with LNC members, with Joe, with other staff members, so that we can take the strategy where it needs to go based off of data. And continue to try to utilize tools like eCanvasser, which, as Joe had pointed out, the candidates who used eCanvasser performed markedly better than candidates who did not. So we need candidates to be aware that that tool exists, but also renegotiate what we need to with eCanvasser so that we can continue to use it affordably. And with that, I think that's it. And I'm open to questions either after Kara goes or whenever.
Let's do it. Let's do it all at once.
Okay.
Ms. Butler, congratulations. I don't know if there's anything you want to say before we move on to Ms. Schultz.
The only thing I can say is thank you so much. I fundraised about $9,000 for a city council race, and aside from getting a sizable donation from Mises, that came from libertarians across the country. You know, smaller donors. So this was a us thing, you know, and there were so many times when I was so done, and those calls were the only thing that kept me going. So I am proud to be the Libertarian Frontier unicorn and to claim a victory for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Mr. Pizzell, just so in case everybody doesn't know, how many times did you talk to your candidates each week?
I had 2 calls a day, every day, Monday through Friday, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening.
Okay. All right. Ms. Schultz.
Okay, just to run through a few of the numbers, we had about 574 candidates that made it onto the ballot and ran. That doesn't include people who are knocked out in their primary. Because in some states, such as California, we had candidates who were on the ballot, but it was the top 2 and they got knocked out. So excluding those candidates, it was 574 made it to their general election ballot. I'm extremely pleased with that number. This was not an easy year to run. We had many candidates who were getting geared up to run, and they just put it on ice for a year or 2 because they were concerned about how do you even campaign during these times. We had 18 and counting wins. We still have a few races that the ballots aren't totally counted, and we have candidates such as Driscoll who might still be within the margin of a win. So we're going to check on that. The other nice thing is we're hearing a lot of stories from our candidates about what has happened on the campaign trail. And thank you to everyone that is assisting with making those calls, thanking all of our candidates. We're getting a lot of valuable information from that, not just information on, thanking them and appreciation, but they're also giving us good feedback on what we can do better, what happened on the campaign trail, what their plans are for the future, because we're already seeing some candidates who are saying, yep, I ran this race and I did it as kind of a test race and tested things out. And so I am ready for this next election and I'm in a way better position to do that. So we can get back with those prospects. But one of the nice things that we're hearing from these candidates while we're making these calls, and we are keeping these notes in the spreadsheet, is all of the people that they're bringing into the party. And one of the most notable things that we've had is, so Kayla Schmaro, when she won her election for city council, she had the support of a Democratic vice mayor in her city. And through interacting with her, interacting with other libertarians, working on that campaign team, seeing what it is to be a libertarian, he officially changed his party affiliation, and so now he is an elected libertarian. We should be hearing more things like that from within that city. So that's just one race. We're also seeing some of our candidates who did not win, but did a very good showing. are already being offered appointed positions on city commissions and other things like that. And that's a fairly normal thing that happens. You have a good showing, it's going to be noticed. You'll more than likely get offered an appointed position in your community. Just looking at some numbers, again, at the local level, if you ran as a Libertarian last year, which was an off year, it was I believe a 37% chance you would be elected. In this election, even though it was a presidential election with all the ugliness, it was a 20% chance, which is still pretty dang high for our local level candidates. And some of these were partisan. So these were not all nonpartisan positions. Several of them were partisan wins.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. And with that, we'll open it up for questions, discussion, comments. I had Ms. Sarwark and Mr. Lucchini and Ms. Harlos. I don't know whether they still want to be recognized. Hands have been going up and down, but Ms. Sarwark.
Hi, I had two questions. I think Apollo answered the one, but I just want to make sure I heard it right. One of the state chairs I spoke to last week asked if we were renewing our contract with eCanvasser, and I said I would check into it because I did not know. And my second question was about the data dump from the Joe campaign. Is that going to be added to the CRM, or is it just kind of up to, like, I don't know. What are you going to do with that?
Mr. Pizzell, do you want to handle the eCanvasser part of it, and then I'll address the second part?
Yes, so Dan and I will be having a call with eCanvasser sometime this week. We were again happy with the service that we received from them, and I hope that we can come to something that works for both eCanvasser and for us. So my hope would be yes, that we do find a way to continue it, but we will not know until later this week.
Great, thank you.
And on the second question, which is what are we going to do with all these names, at least technology-wise, we're going to figure that out. I want to make sure it doesn't break the CRM. It's a lot of records. There's another second, or I guess third set of records that's essentially every registered Libertarian or Independent in a select number of states, which the presidential campaign had pulled, and that's literally millions of names. So I want to make sure that we don't break something that everybody uses every day if we add it. But if we'll figure out the best way to get this for use, not just by LNC staff, but also by our state affiliates.
Thank you.
All right. I have lots of names. Mr. Lucchini, Ms. Harlos. I'll just do two at a time. Mr. Lucchini.
Okay, so thank you, Apollo, for your service. I actually have a vague idea what you're going through.
And Mr. Lucchini, you're a little quiet.
I just said I wanted to thank Apollo for everything he's done. I'm a little bit familiar what he was going through. We managed to actually achieve the one thing I wanted to achieve, which is get ballot access, and it almost killed me. But anyway, so here's my new problem, which is first world problem. I have a flood of people wanting to become candidates, and my traditional thing I do is I interview them, trying to figure out, sort the wheat from the chaff. And when the Jorgensen data dump comes in, I have a group of 5 people that are committed to contacting everybody that was active, trying to find candidates. I am committed to being proactive. Now, at some level or another, I don't know if Apollo or the Frontier Project has the funding or the bandwidth, but I would like someone independent of me to evaluate whether or not these people are worth putting effort into. And so if Apollo can say, I mean, do you have the bandwidth to do this during the slack time in the next few months?
So one of the things that Mr. Chair, or the chair, and I and Dan had discussed was exactly how we move forward, because the most obvious improvement that can be made is there's not enough of me to go around. So we are looking at the possibility of bringing on interns, or we're bringing on people to kind of a campaign manager boot camp kind of a situation, so that we can replicate the effort in a more effective way. And one of the things I want to do is in in the 2021 season, have, instead of dealing directly with candidates, dealing with campaign managers in various areas that could possibly be in New Mexico as well, to help guide them to select people that they can assist with directly. So there's a little bit of a 1 degree of separation, but so it allows us to replicate it and teach people more actively in a hands-on way how to become political assets.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzell. Mr. Lucchini, did you have anything more?
No.
All right, thank you. I have Ms. Harlos, then Ms. Adams. Ms. Harlos?
I have a question for Ms. Butler, but before I ask that, I wanted to ask the chair if at the end of this type of discussion, Mr. Lieberman had emailed us about membership numbers, and I'd like to be sure that we discuss that, though it's kind of like out of pace with what we're discussing right now. So just to put that in your ear. But Ms. Butler, if you are still here and if you're allowed to disclose it, you had mentioned a sizable donation from the Mises Caucus. Can you share what that amount was?
Nobody told me I wasn't allowed. It was a max donation for my race, which was $1,500, and that allowed me to get out a second mailer, which absolutely could have been what put me over the edge to win, to be honest.
Okay, and thank you. And there is a point why I wanted to know that. It's more curiosity, but also a point to make that I would encourage all of us. I know we have our favorite cliques and factions and all of that, but I hope hearing something like that we stop all this intra-party picking on which caucus we like and which caucus we don't like, because I think that that's very, very destructive. And we have right here, and I wouldn't care which caucus did it, but we have right here a very positive example of one of our internal party caucuses that frankly catches a lot of crap from people, that I wish we would all just cut that out, because we just see now, for whatever drama happens, they're putting their money where their mouth is and supporting candidates. And we will get more caucuses doing that if we start having a more productive environment. So thank you so much, Ms. Butler.
Mr. Chair, can I piggyback on that?
Mr. Pizzell? Yep.
Yes, I just wanted to say also to the Secretary's point, in the Frontier candidates, they received donations from all 3 of the major caucuses. Max donations went to Bethany's campaign from the Pragmatic Caucus and from the Mises Caucus, and Leela received a donation from the Radical Caucus. So yes, the caucuses were good funders this time around.
Thank you. I have Ms. Adams, then Mr. Nikela. Ms. Adams?
So yeah, number one, yay, right? We waited a really long time for this, so yay. The work that Kara and Apollo did, I just want to point out that in no way, shape, or form did they receive compensation at market rate for that work. Okay, I just absolutely want to point that out. There's no way we could afford on a market rate to hire political operatives to do the amount of work they did for what we pay. So I want everybody to keep that in mind. The work that Apollo did this cycle with the Frontier Project was absolutely amazing. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we did not, as an LNC and as a party, stay close enough on top of things to make sure that we were doing all that we could to support him. We could have done better as a board and as a party. And I throw that out there as cautionary. It's my hope that we will all continue to support the Frontier Project. We've seen the results that we can receive from the Frontier Project, but we need to do better about how we support the project. We need to make sure we're fully supporting it to the same level that we commit to, because we did not do that this cycle. So props, Apollo, props, Kara. You guys are amazing. I know we don't pay you enough, but we're going to try to make up for it with love and kindness and gratitude I hope that's barterable for you guys. We owe you more than we can ever repay you. But what we need to do better. We need to do better. And our caucuses are all stepping up. They get to do what they do, how they do it. All of those caucuses did donate. Even some of our smaller caucuses that couldn't donate money did send volunteers. They did have people help with canvassing. So props to our caucuses, props to our activists and our volunteers. But really, you guys, we owe Apollo and Carol way more than we give them.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. I have Mr. Nikela, then Mr. Molman. Mr. Nikela.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, first off, thank you to Apollo and Carol. You guys did a fantastic job in assisting our candidates this cycle. And I've sung the songs of the Libertarian Frontier Project for some time now, and very happy to see the fruits of your labor. And also very happy to hear that eCanvasser made a difference, because we're very interested in Florida to deploy that in 21 and 22, and want to see that continue. So I'm interested to hear, how that impacted you guys, and like to see that moving forward. Just curious, numbers wise, of the 574 candidates, do we have a timeline when we'll be able to poll nationwide, state by state, on the results in each state and how many candidates we have this election cycle? And if that's already been said, I apologize if I missed it, but I'm sure we're still compiling that data.
So, yeah, so we have it. So you can, and most everyone on the LNC can access my master spreadsheet right now. And I can also send you the link so that you can see it as well. And that does have the information of every candidate. We're putting, the results in there. It's by state. It has, but I'm keeping it to the LNC and just a couple other people, because it does have contact information in there, and I want to have good data privacy on that. And we do have the list of all of our candidates is up on lp.org. We have the list of electeds who are also up in our freshly electeds up on lp.org as well. And Bob is inputting, he's finishing inputting all the percentages, because he tracks quite a bit of other information, not just wins and losses, but candidates, party affiliation, the vote each candidate got. I mean, there's a lot of information that he collects. And so he has that into a document, and then I believe we should be able to suck that in. I think Andy's going to assist with that, and dump that back into the CRM. And so that information can be pulled and sliced and diced at any moment.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nikela. I have Mr. Molman, then Mr. Wendt. Mr. Molman.
All right. To start out, I want to reiterate the thanks to Apollo, Kara, Dan, Andy, all the people that behind the scenes are doing the work that keep to coordinate everything. Thank the candidates for running. Obviously, it takes time out of your life. The supporters of those candidates, the volunteers, everybody who voted Libertarian. Thanks to all those people. The one thing I've seen out of the campaign, for the Joe campaign specifically, at various stops, and again at the party last night, there are people out there who are still excited about libertarianism, excited about our party. We had people at the party last night at the venue next door, because I accidentally walked up to the wrong one and asked for the Libertarian group. They were like, wait, Libertarians, is Joe Jorgensen over there? And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, oh my God. And they were all excited. And I saw that in multiple places. Sign waving in Cincinnati. We saw that there. Random people came up and helped sign wave. There are so many new, young, enthusiastic, energetic people that are going to be involved in the party going forward as a result of the Joe campaign and the other campaigns. And I thank everybody for doing that, because that's what we need, more people. And these people are people who are ready to get active. They want to form a county party. They want to help the next campaign. They want to do that stuff. And I'm super excited about that. As somebody who has been here for 14 years, I haven't seen that level of active for 14 years. I haven't seen that level of like post-election still enthusiasm. Usually there's this, oh my God, that follows an election. The enthusiasm level is high. The positivity level is high. And I'm extremely excited to see that we are moving in that direction, that I see a very positive, forward-looking outlook for us. On the question of the data, I've talked with TJ and Dan and Andy, and we're working on getting that data over. I was informed today that there was a bit of a breach of the NDA, and that some states have received some data. Guys, don't use that yet. We'll get it to you, I promise. That was always part of it. As somebody who was the IT director on the campaign for a bit, I can tell you that was always the intent to get it over there. And we're going to bring it all in. We're going to bring it in clean and in a way that will be usable to all the states. Don't waste your time, because we're going to do it all again anyway. We will make sure that the states get the data, because we want to, again, leverage all those new enthusiastic volunteers to grow the party and be ready for the next set of elections, whether that's next year or in 22. So that's what I had to say about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. I have Mr. Wendt and then Mr. Hewitt. Mr. Wendt.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take a brief minute and congratulate Apollo and Kara and Tricia and everybody who was working on the Frontier project. It's the tip of the spear is really what it is. Really, what I kind of wanted to point out right now was an anecdote I just got off of OCS training this day, and one of the conversations anecdotally I had in the barracks was one of the officer candidates said, "I really wanted Joe Jorgensen to win," and this is a person that I hadn't engaged on, because I don't engage when I'm doing military things politically, but so that came out organically. So that's a really good sign. Some other good signs, I'll start with, I just want to kind of do a quick rundown of what Region 1 looks like. Montana retained ballot access. We had 19 candidates. We were running bipartisan races primarily. We didn't necessarily get a lot of resources behind these candidates. Myself, I got 26% in my bipartisan race. We had a candidate get 30% in her race, and we retained ballot access. Arizona retained ballot access. Oregon retained ballot access, but unfortunately, the past constitutional measure that's going to cost them a lot more to run. So I'm going to dive a little deeper into that to see what's going on with that. Kansas had ballot access, 5% Jason Buckley for U.S. Senate. Let's see. Utah had 3 different races secure their ballot access through 2024. LP Canada and Utah had a race with 132,000 votes over that, and their old record was 82,000. So, and Utah also increased LP voter registration by approximately 4,000 people. So, New Mexico, high water mark is Chris Lucchini's wife, who hit 39%. Historical votes are really good, and they maintained party access. So I'm going to follow up with the other states that I didn't get any responses on, but it's looking good in the West. And that's the big thing. The Frontier Project has proved it can work. Now we need to take the lessons learned and expand.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. I have Mr. Hewitt and Mr. Coburn. Mr. Hewitt?
Yeah, before I forget, I'll just tail in on what Francis just said. He actually, one of his states passed a landmark measure, and I'm going to say that we had a lot to do with it, even though we directly didn't. And that's that Oregon became the first state in the union to decriminalize the possession of all drugs. I think that's huge. I mean, remember when Colorado did it with cannabis, and now look at how many states are that way. But the Libertarians have always been there. We've always talked about this. We've taken the high road. People are starting to follow us. So even though we can't directly say that's our deal, we can take a lot of credit in that, and that's a big deal. And that's in District 1. We're also very lucky to have 2 people like Kara and Apollo, because not all are they good about recruiting and training, but they're also both elected. They sit on city councils, so they know what they're talking about also. And I think it's we can also add onto this
Kenneth Brent Olson. We talked about Kalish Morrow. He has worked his tail off that to help get that across the finish line. I think we're finding out that candidates, I'm not going to say they're a diamond. I'm not saying this about you, Tricia, but compared to competent people that can run campaigns like Apollo and Kara, they're a lot more numerous. So we've got to keep pushing for those people that know how to get people across the line. What Tricia said about getting that donation in time to send out that second mailer, mailers are totally important. My own wife in her race, when Boomer brought back and said, hey, it's going to cost this much money to do a mailer, she didn't think she could do it. And then she got a donation, and that probably helped her to win also. It's, money. It is getting the people with the talent to out Fox, the other opponents, campaign managers and such. I'm a little bit sad. In fact, I'm quite sad that we lost Susan Marie Weber of Palm Desert, who had been elected for 2 terms. They went ahead and they did some gerrymandering. They districted it, and somehow they put her in an area where she didn't have a chance. But Riverside County actually doubled their numbers of city council members with my wife and then Bob Carwin. And Bob Carwin is one of 4 city councilmen and a mayor, but he represents 25,000 people. So that's a big win also. So I think everywhere we're seeing that. We're getting the idea that these are winnable races, but just because they're winnable doesn't mean we don't have to work as hard as we possibly can. And I'm wondering if Apollo is ever going to go back to Utah, because I think he's going to start living in Wyoming. He's wearing a hat right now with it and everything else. I think, Utah's too city, isn't it? You're starting to love Wyoming. So congratulations, guys. And the Burt win was amazing. And our best candidate we've ever had, she's going on to great things. And that's probably Bethany Valdez. So again, a lot of love to her, a lot of hard work. They focused in on her. And when we have people to do that, where they're putting all their resources against us, we're winning already.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. And please convey our congratulations to Wendy on her win as well. I have Mr. Coburn and then Ms. Hogarth. Mr. Coburn.
Sure. And of course, I'd like to echo the sentiments from before, but I do have 2 questions. I don't want to take up too much time. Or I guess one of them is a request. So you were talking about eCanvasser. I actually had quite a bit of difficulty using eCanvasser and did not have very good feedback and reception from the company. So I would encourage you to talk with other candidates that used it. I'm not sure if that was an isolated situation, but before getting involved in another deal or another engagement, I would suggest talking with candidates and hear their feedback and see if it worked or it didn't work. And so that's the request. The second one is, I'm not sure if this is appropriate to address in this meeting, so certainly if it's not, you can tell me that. But I was just hoping for a little bit more color in terms of why we were not pursuing a recount for Bethany.
Yes. As far as eCanvasser, yeah, we'll be having discussions with people. I do think that the biggest problem with eCanvasser this cycle was less about the software and more about our ability to teach candidates how to effectively use the software. The way that we had negotiated with eCanvasser was less about them doing the work for us, and it was about us carrying it. And I just don't think there was anybody to catch it once it was in our hands. And so I think it kind of just laid there like a dead fish on the table, and we kind of just wherever we could would get it out to people, but it was delayed, and there was definitely some areas that I believe we need to fix before we go any further with them. As far as Bethany's race, yes, let me, we covered it a little bit in previous meetings. A recount would be handled by the county attorney's office, and the opponent was the county attorney. That was number one. Number two is Bethany has created a lot of goodwill, and it's very, very especially in the tense national environment, it was not a good idea for Bethany for going forward, either for the race or for her future career. It is very, very rare, exceedingly rare, for a recount to result in a flipped election unless it's single digits. It's very, very, very rare. And when the person counting the recount is the opponent, I just don't have a whole lot of faith in that system. So that's number one. Number two, Bethany has put 3 years of her life into it and didn't want to continue, which I think is fair. I mean, 3 years of exhausting amounts of work. I mean, I really do want to give a shout out to Bethany. Marshall would not be possible without Bethany. At the doors, people would say, they wouldn't bring up Marshall. They'd say, "Oh, Dad, that girl up in Riverton, she almost did it," and that's how we broke through that barrier. So Bethany, we owe Bethany a great deal of thanks, and I don't think that she wanted to go through with that anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzell. I have Ms. Hogarth and then Mr. Phillips. Ms. Hogarth?
Yeah, Kara, you said something that caught my attention. You said a candidate had a 1 in 5 chance of winning. Maybe I misunderstood. That sounds like, I'm sorry, 20% chance of winning. That sounds like 1 in 5 of our candidates won. Yeah,
At the local level. So if it was a municipal level candidate, that is what the win percentage was.
Okay. Okay. Wow, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hogarth. I have Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. I mean, I've talked to both Apollo and Kara over the last couple of years, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I just want everybody to realize, you know, as Ms. Adams said, not only do we not get what we pay them for, or we get way more than we pay them for, but you know, I talked to each of them individually several times, and the amount of just sheer blood, sweat, and tears that they put in, and I mean that literally, into this project, and how hard they work. And you know, I've had to call Kara and talk to her and say, hey, listen, you need to back off because you're working yourself too hard. And I've expressed some similar things to Apollo. They practically kill themselves for us, and so if in the future we can find a way to tap some of these donors and get them some backup, it needs to be at the top of our priority list.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. The queue is open. I'm just going to add a few comments. Winning creates credibility. And there are a lot of donors that we interacted with when we were looking to fund this project, when we first launched at the Frontier Project, who were like, come back to me when you prove concept. And we've now proven concept. And so we've been reconnecting with some of those donors, and well, winning opens doors. So I'm going to be working with Apollo and Kara and the rest of the staff to develop a action plan for 2021 and 2022 that will build on the lessons we learned this year, and aim to elect a whole lot more people in that time frame. And I hope to present that in advance of the budget meeting so that we can have discussion on it as part of our budget discussions. Separately, we're going to be, I'm pleased to announce 3 new initiatives, which if you've read my framework document are not really new for you. They're in there. But one of them is the Libertarian Elected Officials Network, or LEON, which in talking to a lot of our current electeds as well as some of our newly electeds, there's a lot of value in connecting them with each other so that they can mutually support each other, both in policy ideas and navigating the things that Libertarian elected officials have to navigate, but also just kind of being a morale boost for each other and knowing that you're not in this alone. Where we're at right now is oftentimes our Libertarian elected officials are the only Libertarian elected official on their board or council or wherever they happen to be. We've got Marshall Burt's going to be one of 60 in the Wyoming House, and he's already got everybody who wants to be Speaker or Whip calling him to ask for his vote and all of that. So just making sure that they are all connected with each other, and I haven't yet talked to an elected Libertarian who isn't enthusiastic about this being launched. So that is coming soon. Second is sometime between now and the end of the year, I would like to put together a ballot access summit where we can formally kind of go over where we stand on ballot access. I have a tentative evaluation that was done very quickly in the last couple of days by Bob Johnson and some others, where they think we're at about 31 states plus the District of Columbia. And I know Mr. Hines is on the call. He was the one who retained our ballot access in the District of Columbia. So thank you, Mr. Hines. So what the purpose of the ballot access summit would be is to figure out the best way to use our resources for ballot access purposes in the next 2 years. Obviously, in some states where we lost and we've got to regain, states like Ohio and New York, we have to really come up with what our strategy is going to be. In some states, maybe we try a litigation approach or a legislative approach. I want to think holistically rather than just how do we, hire petitioners and do it. That may be what we end up having to do in different states, but I want it to be part of a process. And I'd like to do it in a summit form so that all of our state affiliates can have a seat at the table as part of those discussions. And then ultimately, of course, it'll wrap into a recommendation to the LNC as far as resources go. And then third, something that Mr. Pizzell mentioned, and something that I'm sure Ms. Schultz would mention if we let her, if we asked, which is on training. Training is obviously a big, important thing for the success of our candidates, not just in training on how to message and training how to respond to media, but also training up our campaign operatives. It's something I heard from so many of our candidates that we don't have enough people who are able to be campaign managers and field directors and fundraising directors and all of that. And I think that's been mentioned by a number of you over the time. So I plan on working with Apollo and Kara and others to expand our current training programs to encompass more of that so that we can have many more people who have these skills and are able to be deployed. And there's pros and cons of campaigns using hired firms versus libertarian volunteers. I think most of the candidates this year, from Joe and Spike on down, used libertarians for a lot of these positions. And the upside of that is we've got a lot of people who did a lot of amazing stuff and learned some great skills. So we had a text banking operation that sent out hundreds of thousands of text messages. So we know how to do that now. We had a door knocking operation that knocked on, I don't know how many tens of thousands of doors. Apollo mentioned that earlier. So that's, we know how to do that now. And so on, whether it be graphic design or marketing and all of that. Just making sure that we've got a lot of people who can do these skills so that the next time, if we want to run 10 candidates or 20 candidates or 50 candidates next time, we have the talent to be able to support them in those endeavors. Ms. Adams.
Yeah, I just want to push back a little bit about one thing you said. I love 99.9% of what you said. I want to qualify that. But when you say using professional firms versus libertarian volunteers, I'm going to push back all day long. It implies that if you're a libertarian and you're running for office, your campaign staff should be willing to work for free. And that violates the labor theory of libertarianism. You get what you pay for 90% of the time. Yes, we need more trained people, but the fact is we have tons of well-trained people. We have candidates who can't afford to pay them. If we're going to focus on this, let's make a big part of that raising the funds so that we are, as a party, better able to help our candidates afford good, qualified libertarian staff. They already exist, but we don't believe in welfare, not even for campaigns.
I completely agree with you, and thank you for raising that. I posted, a couple of weeks ago, the top 3 questions that I got during the campaign season. And funny enough, nobody ever asked what 1 and 2 were. I said what number 3 was. Number 1 was, number 2 was, have you thought about having Joe on the Joe Rogan show? We got that question about every 10 minutes over the last 4 months. But the number 1 question was, have you thought about running ads to promote the the candidates of the Libertarian Party? A day of ads in California, like saturation ad campaign in California, is about $1 million a day. The Joe Spike campaign spent $3 million total. So we got a long way to climb on a lot of that stuff. And building up talent and infrastructure within the party and raising the funds to be able to pay for quality work by our own people and be able to make sure people aren't on starvation wages for it. It's a big reason I ran for chair. Mr. Wendt.
Yes, I actually have just a question and an idea that's not really mature, but I'm kind of looking to solicit some advice. Looking at the results we've got from this election, my thought is, have we had a congressional committee before? A group of people that's just sliced out specifically to look at what is our congressional impact? What is the strategies that we want to look forward? And I'd love to know if we've had that or if it's something we want to draft. Because if we're going to start winning, we need to make sure that the next level, once we've won these lower levels, is already prepped. So that's something that I think we can move towards.
The answer is I think it does exist, at least on paper. Not very active, obviously, since we're kind of not at that point yet. But I am enthused by the momentum here. I mean, we're a 49-year-old party. I've been in it for 30 years, and we seem to have been stuck in neutral for a lot of it. And I think we're climbing out of that. So I'm very excited. I have Ms. Harless and then Ms. Adams, and I think we're out of time on this item after that.
Okay, since we seem to have been getting past the other discussion, I'll bring up the points that I'd wanted to before, which was as far as membership growth after the presidential campaign. I'm referring specifically to the email that was sent to us by Dr. Lieberman, who noted that we actually lost 2 members in October. So what are we doing with this data we got from the Jorgensen campaign, which I assume we have gotten? Have we already started asking these people to become national members? Because there really is a window of opportunity on that before they move on with their lives. And has this data gone out to the states? I know at least a month ago, the chair of Hawaii asked me for that information, and we were all very much in the thick of things. I have to say, I really wasn't too happy with the answer I'd gotten at that time, but I knew everyone was running around like crazy. So now that we're past the election, I want to know what we're doing with this data and how we're going to use this to grow the party, because I hadn't had a chance to digest the membership numbers yet. Honestly, I'm a bit shocked we went down. So if we could, get that rolling or that discussion going a bit, I'd really appreciate it.
We're all still kind of, I'm glad you're not in the thick of it anymore. I feel like the last hour was like my first time being out of the thick of it. But we ended, where we're at right now is above 21,000, which I forget how far back you have to go to see where we're at on that level. Membership, like I said earlier, we're up 29% for the year. Obviously, you're going to have ebbs and flows for different months, but that's where we're at on membership. As for the usage of the data, staff is having a extended discussion later on this week on that topic, and if there's particular uses you want to, I mean, from what I'm getting from the committee, it's we want to make sure that affiliates get this information, whether they're on the CRM or not. We want to make sure that we're doing something with the information, both in terms of membership appeals and fundraising appeals and volunteer opportunities and candidate recruitment and activism and all of that. So, I mean, we're going to do that. So I guess there's some notes here from staff, Mr. Kraus and then Mr. Fishman.
Mr. Chair, just one moment. I apologize if my tone seemed at all negative, because I'm judging by your response that maybe it was received that way, and I didn't intend it that way. I was just curious as to what we were doing, and I would ask staff if at all possible when they have time. I know when they have time, right? But if they could just loop me in occasionally as to what they're doing with that data, it is something I am very personally interested in. I would appreciate those kinds of updates.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus and Mr. Fishman?
I yield to Dan.
Okay. Mr. Fishman?
So just to let you guys know, I do have the last dump of the Jorgensen campaign data. I'm separating it into buckets, people who were interested, people who actually donated money, comparing it against the current list of anybody who's ever given us a gift in the last 20 years. And part of that is going through by street address, going through by email, stuff like that. When we get all the buckets sorted, we'll store it. We're going to store it in the CRM, not in a way that's going to make the CRM slow. We also have an additional database. When all that stuff is set out in the buckets and stuff like that, we will pass it to the states as well. So we certainly have a plan for absolute and complete distribution to the states as soon as essentially we've sanitized the data and made it as palatable for them as we can. I want to make it easy for them to consume the data.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Ms. Adams.
I just had a couple points of information. I had a call with Steve Dosbeck yesterday, finishing up some of our campaigns and stuff. He made it pretty clear to me that not all of the data is ready to be dumped. They're still working on it. So we don't even have all of the data from the campaign yet that we're going to get. And I think we really are going to need to give staff some time to filter through some of that. There's a whole lot of duplicates on there, guys. There's a whole lot of work to be done just in housekeeping. So that's to that. As far as the congressional committee, that committee exists, but it's separate from the party, right? It kind of exists similarly to how the LSLA exists. So it would be a matter of getting a hold of the individuals who kind of hold the strings, and either getting it from them, finding a negotiation, something like that. A lot of those things existed pre any of us, and they were set up in ways similar to that, right? So it's just going to be a process that's going to take some time too. As far as the data, from my position as a regional representative position, yeah, I want all of my states to have that data, whether they're on the CRM or not. It's up to them to do whatever they want to do with it. But I fully trust staff to figure out how best to utilize that data from a national standpoint. And I would hate to see us start getting into the middle of that and trying to micromanage that while they're still sorting through this data. I've seen a lot of this data. It's going to be a nightmare. So I would ask that we give them a little bit of grace as they're working through all of that.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Time has expired on this item. So unless there's anything else, or if anybody wants to extend time. It's been said 30 times already, but Apollo, Kara, thank you so much. Next item we have is announcements. If any member of the committee wants to speak on anything, and we've got 5 minutes for that. Mr. Molman.
Mr. Chair, I love that we're having monthly meetings. I would like to ask the committee, and this is just something not for a motion tonight, but to consider that perhaps we start these meetings 1 hour earlier. We seem to be running for 2 hours regularly, and so I just want to ask that maybe we consider that it runs a little late to the Eastern time zone.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Mr. Phillips.
Two things. One is when you're asking for motions to extend time and things like that, if you could give us a second longer or two, just because some of us are not as skilled at finding the unmute button as others. It's okay, but I would have moved to extend the time on the last item to allow Kara to speak. And then to address Mr. Molman, the 7 o'clock time is my fault. It was originally 6 o'clock, and I asked it to be 7 o'clock because I have family dinner with my father every Saturday at 6 p.m. And so, so 7 p.m. Central Standard or Eastern time. And so the time was by my request. If that doesn't work for everybody else, I'm of course willing to be flexible, but that was the reasoning behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Anybody else? And then Ms. Schultz, I'm sorry, I didn't know you wanted to speak more. I'm sure the committee wouldn't mind hearing from you again.
Oh, no, my apologies, I did not.
Okay.
I'm sorry if that was the impression.
All right, no problem.
Chair, just 2 seconds, not for anything.
Sure.
I want to go ahead and give some heads up to Aaron Starr and Alicia Madison too. They were running 4 of those different measures in the city of Oxnard, although he was not successful in gaining a seat on the city council. It looks like at least 2 of his measures are going to pass. So those are very good libertarian measures, trying to take control of a somewhat corrupt city council. So, let's give him some props too, because they worked their tail off, put a lot of their own money into it. Hard work. We make a difference.
Did he take third, Jeff?
He took third out of 4 or 5 people or something, but their measures is what they really did, and they put it all in, and they put 4 measures out. 2 of them look like they're going to pass for sure, and a third one might do it too. So,
thank you. Anyone else?
I wanted to have an announcement, but I haven't gotten approval to make the announcement yet. So,
okay,
I can.
Do you want us to wait a couple seconds, or?
Yeah, give me just 2 seconds. I'm going to ask my
Yes.
partner in crime. Can I?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to congratulate Whitney, who became a grandmother today, on the birth of her grandson Aldo.
Ooh!
Hey!
Hey!
Thank you.
All right. To quote Valerie Sarwark, "Freedom for freedom."
I mean, how cool is that, right?
Yes. About an hour before this call, actually.
I am so excited for you. I'm over the moon.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, that concludes announcements. Now, opportunity for public comment if any member of the gallery wishes to address the committee. Dan, your hand's up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention for people who haven't been to any of the Libertarian Party happy hours, they have been going longer and longer, and more people have been coming in there. Aaron Adams could not have been funnier, just preaching the gospel of liberty. Mr. Valente's in there on a regular basis. Please, every Friday night, we go from 5 p.m. Eastern till it's running till around midnight now. So, and midnight might be conservative. So please feel free to join into Libertarian Party Happy Hour.
Yeah, I think we ran till 2 this last time, 2 a.m.
It was 2 or 3. It was 2 a.m. Central, 3 a.m. Eastern. Yes.
Stacy's asking where it's at. So it's an online Zoom happy hour, and you can find the link on the LP Facebook page.
But does that mean it's figuratively closing the bar down?
Yes.
It's Google Meet, not Zoom.
I have
Google Meet, yeah.
Carl Newman and Andy Craig. Mr. Newman.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I wanted to comment on the social media stuff, and I actually had sent Eric an email during this meeting about it. But I thought one of the good ideas that I've seen from other political action groups, not necessarily parties, is they have 1 to 2 minute videos of people speaking about the policy ideas that they have. in good formats. And I think, as an example, some of the immigrants members of our party should be giving 1 to 2 minute speeches for videos to put on Twitter and TikTok and all these other social media platforms, because the political ideas spread through these short videos on those types of platforms amongst the high school and college age generation. And it feels like that is a inexpensive but good way to reach out to younger generations.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Mr. Craig.
Yes, thank you. This is going to be slightly repetitive, but I just wanted to reiterate. I went out to Wyoming for the last week of the race and saw up close. I mean, I've been getting a lot of reports, but I went and saw on the ground what Apollo and the Frontier team were doing. And I want to give immense credit to not only Apollo for what he did, but also our canvassers that he was able to recruit and work with. They moved mountains in these races. I have never seen on the ground the kind of positive reaction and public support for a Libertarian candidate like we saw. And it was immensely satisfying after 8 years in the party for me. I know a lot of y'all have been around longer, but to have that win on election night, it was really special. And I think it's incredible what the potential is here for expanding and replicating this, and some of the good people that Apollo can bring in and train in his, they were not only working hard, they were working smart in these races, getting local support, having candidates who were involved in their communities and civic leaders. And so I just can't say enough good about it. And I want to thank the LNC for your support, for the funding and everything to make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Mr. Pizzell?
Yes, I did want to just say, I thank Sandy for reminding me. I feel terrible for not recognizing them, but we did have a very good team. It was very, very hard to recruit because of COVID. It was very challenging. We had missing persons. We had people leaving us high and dry. It was a dramatic experience getting canvassers hired. So I'm very, very grateful to them. Brandon Ellison, Travis Irvine, Mario Pursuti, Ford, Travis Reese, and we actually also hired Marshall's wife, Thursa Burt, and they were all incredibly very helpful, and they lived through one of the hardest campaigns that I've ever experienced. So I do want to thank them. They were fantastic.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is more directed to I cannot remember who the membership director of LNC is. My
Jess
county.
Mears.
I'm sorry?
Jess Mears.
Jess, okay. So my question is, as far as the election goes, I saw that my county had well over 2,000 votes for Joe Jorgensen, as well as nearly 3,000 for our other statewide candidates. Does the LNC have any way of us being able to reach out to those voters to recruit them? Because right now our county affiliate is only approximately 5 people deep right now, and we'd like to get those 2,000 to 3,000 people more involved.
We don't have any way of knowing who voted a specific way once they enter that ballot box. So it would be guesswork. We could tell you who's registered, who reached out to volunteer.
Yeah. If they're registered Libertarian, in the states that have that, we may have that information. But yeah, it's
okay.
The one other thing
it's secret.
The one other thing I would add to that is that in states where there was a primary, you know who pulled the Libertarian ticket, and that's a great source of data.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, that closes opportunity for public comment, and with no further items on the agenda, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Molman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, let's say, Went. And is there any objection? Seeing no objection, we're adjourned at 10:02 Eastern Time.